Okay, hello, good morning. Welcome to this session for another discussion about things that have to do with technology and innovation. We had a very interesting here from the previous panel about innovation in the tech sector in Cyprus. One of the main pillars now for tech innovation in the world is happening around the electrification of the economy, and specifically about the electrification of transport. So there is now a pressing need, and we'll come back to that many times in the discussion, I'm sure, to reduce our emissions, not because of the external targets that Cyprus has, which are mostly set by Europe, but because it's an existential matter for everybody, because of climate change. And electrifying our vehicles, mostly our cars, is one of the main tools that we have for achieving this goal. Today we have a panel of experts and actually of industrialists and technologists that have a long history and long experience in the field that dates back to the times when electric cars were only basically in history books when they were first appeared in the late 19th century, and they weren't really a reality, but they are now. I think we're going to have an interesting exchange of ideas where we stand now and what needs to be done in the future, especially what regards the EV charging stations. Because the main issue that current drivers are facing when they want thinking about switching to an electric vehicle is range anxiety, which means that if they can actually reach where they want to go. Cyprus is, of course, a favorable place for that because it's very small, so distances are not that great. And the second one is the charging infrastructure. And we'll come back to the difference between public chargers and charging at home. So I'll start with a few introductions of our speakers. First of all, I am Nestor Fylaktos. I'm a research scientist at the Cyprus Institute. We work on matters of the energy transition and energy strategies together with, we advise the government, we also do our own research. And this is a matter which is very close to our studies and our papers and our talks because, as I said in the beginning, it's a crucial and one of the main tools that we have for the reduction of emissions, especially for an energy system like Cyprus, which is isolated. No interconnections to the outside world. There will be one, of course, you've heard in the news, but we don't have one now. So, first speaker on my left is Alexis Anninos. He's the managing director of the Cyprus Import Corporation that has under its umbrella the general distribution of 10 leading car brands. He's also the chairman of the Motor Vehicle Importers Association that operates under the Cyprus Employers and Industrialists Federation. Correct?
Yes. Morning.
So, Alexis, first question for you. So, I made this short introduction of why we need to go towards electrification. But what is the adoption rate of EVs in Cyprus, and how does it compare to the rest of the EU?
For this year, for 2024, for battery electric vehicles, new passenger cars, we are currently at 6%, whereas in Europe, EU, EFTA, and UK, we are around 14%. For plug-in hybrids, we are currently at 4% in Cyprus, and in the EU, more than 7%. So we are far behind the EU. One of the reasons, the rest of Europe, one of the reasons that the first time that subsidies were introduced in Cyprus were back in 2002, 2.5 years ago. And another reason is that this year, for the first time, the procedure for applying and securing a subsidy has become much easier, therefore facilitating the whole process.
So you're basically saying that without an external support, the EV adoption will be almost zero. So we need actually somebody to support the purchase of a new EV.
Definitely, because even now the difference between a vehicle with internal combustion engine or a hybrid drive compared with the battery electric, the price difference is considerable, and we need this subsidy. Makes a lot of difference.
Okay, this is a good point to come back to. On his left is Petrou. He's a mechanical engineer by profession. He has recently served as the president of the Cyprus Employers and Industrial Association. He has a very, very long history in Cyprus. He's currently the chairman of the Electricity Authority of Cyprus, the EAC. He also holds the position of the CEO of Star Oil Cyprus. This does disservice to you, only these few sentences. But so, first question for you. Well, what is the view of the Cyprus Employers Federation about the practical issues with EV charging? especially for those that do not or cannot have access to charging at home or at work.
Thank you for the invitation. As you rightly said, I'm representing Employees Federation here. Sorry. So I do represent Employees Federation and not the Electricity Authority, although the Electricity Authority is very much involved in installation.
Yes, and we'll come back to it.
But I can answer the questions later. It is very crucial to accelerate the installation of chargers. So far, we see them spread here and there. Some all-car EV owners do have installed chargers at their home, but unless we install widely chargers, it will be very difficult. And many people are considering this as a problem. And you hear of people traveling from here to Paphos and have to recharge to come back to Nicosia. And you have to find a charger on the way. So it is very crucial to accelerate this installation where you can have them at motorways, some public locations, but also at gas stations. Cyprus has today something like 330 gas stations. And if we allow to install chargers with certain conditions, then that will facilitate the recharging of vehicles much easier. So this is something we are encouraging, and this is something we are pressing the authorities to accept. Now, our idea is having all these chargers, try to connect them to renewable. This is the only way that we can reduce prices, because prices in Cyprus, as you all know, are very high, electricity prices, and we don't see any major reduction in the foreseeable future. So it is very important that we connect these chargers, or as many as we can, to renewable sources, so we can reduce the price. Now, we are aware of the vehicle discharge process, which is a new technology, but it's too early for Cyprus, whereby electric cars can deliver or discharge some of their power to storage. But this is something we will see in the future.
You're talking about vehicle-to-grid technologies,
Yes.
and this is
Yes.
something we will touch on a bit later. Thank you very much. Next speaker on his left is another person that will be disserved by just a few sentences. It's Dinos Lefkaritis. He's graduated from the Pan-Cyprian Commercial Institute of Larnaca before pursuing business studies in England. His career spans diverse sectors, including insurance, marine, marketing, and finance. Currently holds a position of Managing Director of Petrolina Holdings Limited and oversees the Lefkaritis group of companies. He serves as Executive Chairman in various ventures, including PPT Aviation Services, many companies which I'm not going to list now. He's active also in community leadership. He's the President of Larnaca Tourist Board, the Chairman of Commerce, ICFC, the Cyprus Ski Federation, and also leads the Larnaca 2030 company. Thank you very much for coming. In continuation to Yorgos' response, because he mentioned about the coexistence of e-charging stations and petrol stations, and you are the CEO of a group that actually has a lot of petrol stations under its umbrella. So what steps has the Petrolina group taken to address the lack of public charging stations in Cyprus?
Well, Petrolina, since 1960, when our fathers have created Petrolina, is having one vision, is to be always first in everything. So we try always to be the first to everything. And this is why around 10 years ago we started the solar company, and we started also being an electric provider for customers. Now the issue of the charges, we have one department which is handling this at the moment. Is handled by my youngest son, and we are the first company, petroleum company, which now we are also an energy company, which have installed a fast charger in a petroleum station. So that will give our clients the benefit that to choose whether they want to move with petrol or diesel or electric. We have also done what George said earlier on a highway, which is in the station of Chirokidia, which gives the option that somebody can stop and charge his or her car. And that is a very good benefit to the public. We are also have in positions to various stations like supermarkets and various key positions. We are at the moment about 100 chargers have installed as a company, and we keep going on. Our target is by the end of the year to have cover most of the areas of Cyprus.
Great, thank you very much. I'm going to actually insist a little bit on this point because you mentioned it about the DC fast charging. I was about to ask you about this later, but since you mentioned it, how important this is for the adoption of EVs and for the, let's say, propagation of chargers in Cyprus?
It's very important. Actually, the one in Larnaca, which is 150 kVA, can charge a car within, say, around 15 minutes.
If the car is able to do that.
Not a full charge, but at least it can be about 80%, which I understand the car manufacturers are suggesting their clients to not to full charge a car, only charge around 80% of the capacity.
That's correct. That has to do with the battery chemistry. But the infrastructure that you need to provide this very, very high power is, I would assume, you know better, is not just twice as expensive as a normal charger. It's probably many times more because of all the hardware that's needed, the upgrade of the local electricity grid. How does your business model look like? Do you have to charge a premium for these chargers?
Well, at the moment, it's we take it like a marketing matter as a company. Right. I can tell you at the moment we are not having any profits, but this is something that we had to, as I said in the beginning, our vision is that we want to follow what is going on in the world. So we want to be first in everything, as I said. And one of the points that we are working at the moment is this, and various other things like hydrogono and like other things which we are evaluating. And we hope that in the future we will have a go on it.
But at the moment, your pricing policy for DC or AC charging is the same?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on from these technological topics, which we'll come back to later, I'd like to introduce Ms. Marianna Nathanail, is the head of the European Investment Bank representation in Greece, engaging actively with the EU delegations, national, local, public and private sector stakeholders, business associations and academia partners in Greece and Cyprus to promote the strategic orientation and priorities of the European Investment Bank, also supporting sustainable investments, the energy transition, important here, climate adaptation, research innovation, female entrepreneurship, social investments and skills. It's a professional of 25 years of service in banking, finance and legal sector. And thank you, Marianna, for being here in this panel. You bring a different sort of angle to this discussion, and not just from the technological side, but also from what is needed to be done in terms of investments and how the European Investment Bank helps with assisting this transition. So,
thank you very much for the invitation. I am representing indeed the European Investment Bank, and for those that may not know, the bank is the Bank of the European Union. It's a bank that belongs to the 27 member states. We act in 160 different countries around the globe, but we aim to implement the policies that are defined by the European Union. So one of the priorities for us is the Green Deal, and this is why we have taken a very ambitious and very brave step, I would say, in 2019. We decided to be the climate bank of the European Union. And what does this mean? It means that we were the first multilateral development bank who decided to be Paris-aligned. We committed to invest more than 50% of our annual investments in green financing. And we have committed to invest more than 1 trillion by 2030 in green investments. Impressive numbers, and I can say that we are already on track. More than 50% of our annual investments are in green investments, and we have already invested 350 million in green investments since 2021. So we are on track for the 1 trillion investments. So just to give you also how we connect with Cyprus, and I think that this is important at this stage of our discussion. Cyprus is one of the countries that benefit most from the financing tools of the European Investment Bank. We have, comparing to the GDP, I believe that it's one of the most among the member states benefiting from our financing. We have intensified our support for Cyprus since 2021, from 2011 until 2012, we invested 3 billion in Cyprus. In total, we have invested 6 billion, less than 6 billion. Imagine that we have done most of the financing in Cyprus after the beginning of the crisis. And this is very important because it shows that we are committed and we are consistent in our financing in Cyprus. So we have, after 2019, we amended our transport lending policy, and we have put electrification, sustainable transport in our priority. We focus on electrification and the creation of EV charging infrastructure, but at the same time, we want to have sustainable urban mobility plans. We want to support them. We support them with technical assistance tools. And we also support, of course, collective transport. But as I mentioned, it is the electrification of the road transport. It is in our priorities.
Okay, thank you very much, Marianna. Actually, this is a great gateway for the speaker next to you because you talked about the urban transport, and Christos Gkartzonikas is actually somebody who comes from the same area as I am. We are collaborators. He's a researcher at the University of Cyprus. He's a transport research for MaaSLab with a PhD in civil engineering, specialized in transport engineering from Petrou University. His research works relate to current and emerging transportation modes and services integrating travel behavior, transportation planning and policy analysis, using quantitative methods. He's been involved in various national and transnational research projects aiming to reduce current use in Cyprus, and I will add here basically that we also have worked together in the past in assisting the municipality of Limassol in looking into these issues and the way that they will be transitioning to a net zero city by 2030. Very, of course, ambitious goal, but they have the contract. So, Christos, welcome.
Nice to have you.
So what's the role of cities in facilitating EV adoption? Are electric vehicles really desirable? Or should we emphasize the overall reduction in cars and using cities instead? So are we changing one car to a different drivetrain? Is this a solution, or should we just get rid of them all?
So, as you heard in the first or the second sentence of this panel, one of the main barriers of EVs in Cyprus is not range anxiety, of course, but it's charging infrastructure. And cities can help on that. And specifically, cities can help on expanding the public charging stations around, and specifically in locating charging stations, public charging stations, in accessible locations such as like the roads, shopping malls, public transportation hubs, and so forth. And it's also very important in very dense residential urban areas where people live usually in flats and they do not have like their private garages to charge their electric vehicles. At the same time, cities can adopt the so-called carrot and stick policies with the form of incentivizing the use of electric vehicles and at the same time discouraging the use of internal combustion engine vehicles. And a way to do it can be like in the form of low emission zones or reduced parking fees for electric vehicles. But it's also equally important for cities to integrate electromobility and electric vehicles in their service vehicles, for example, or in their public transportation fleet. At the same time, cities can partner with different stakeholders and private sectors to bring like charging solutions that are more aligned to the needs of people, for example, and align them with the energy grid, such as smart charging to prevent the overloading during off-peak hours. But like a rhetorical questions, are EVs really desirable? Is an EV, this is debatable, right? To have an EV where you will be charging it with electricity that is produced by fossil fuels. So if we are not taking advantage of renewable energy sources to charge our vehicles and instead keep using like fossil fuels, EVs cannot be like a way to decarbonization and achieve those like Greek deals and those optimistic goals, for example, in the case of Limassol. So, of course, electric vehicles have some evident environmental benefits, but at the same time, given their high purchase cost, they have some social economic issues associated with their use or their purchase. But at the same time, it's equally important not to try to replace one internal combustion engine vehicle with one electric vehicle, but try to combine electromobility with shared mobility services, public transportation, for example, that can reduce congestion and improve the quality of life. So promoting electromobility should be accompanied with strategies that promote, that reduce the car dependency and promote shared transportation modes and so forth.
Okay, thank you very much. As a comment to what you have just said, EVs indeed are not a silver bullet. They cannot actually solve all these problems, but there are ways to make them more useful. We have the issue now in Cyprus because of its isolation of extreme curtailment of production of electricity by renewables, especially during spring and autumn. And obviously during the day, because we have a lot of PVs installed. This is where the EVs can help with some behavioral shifts, demand management, so they can actually charge at the time when we are having increased renewable production, because the electricity mix at that time is favorable and not using too many fossil fuels. But thank you. Alex, I'll come back to you. So we talked about the research infrastructure, but besides that, what other major factors currently are influencing Cyprus' progression to EVs?
Time in different discussions and also in social media, which I think is very unfair for the technology and for the vehicles that have been developed for this purpose.
You mean that it has become also a cultural polarization point,
yes,
not just technological?
Yes, it has.
Okay.
I think it's very unfair because besides the obvious reduced emissions for plug-in hybrids or zero emissions for battery electric vehicles, they offer various advantages compared to the vehicles with internal combustion engines in terms of drivability, low maintenance cost, low cost of ownership. And I believe that for a good percentage of Cypriot motorists, the battery electric vehicle makes a very good sense, provided, of course, that they have access to a charging point at home, at work, or a public charging point. So this is the one thing. The second is a matter of choice. One aspect, one factor that is well known and is all around us and very seldomly discussed is that, for example, there's a defined EU path towards reducing emissions, defined in terms of timelines, milestones, and this forces the manufacturers to satisfy a certain set of demands, technological demands, towards that goal, which basically we're talking about going more and more into electrification. The manufacturers are obliged to satisfy these demands, and the vehicles that satisfy these demands, they get the European vehicle type approval and the certificate of conformity, which is the passport of every single vehicle. Now, in Cyprus, it's all around us, it's no secret. In Cyprus, we have two things. One, that the Cyprus regulation. One, that the vehicles that can be registered in Cyprus have to have this European type approval. And another, on the same page, and another paragraph which says you can also register vehicles that don't have a European vehicle type approval or certificate of conformity. And you can do that in any numbers, in any scale. And that applies for passenger cars. Moreover, I have to add that there has been, it's public, there has been a document that came out from the Ministry of Communication Works in beginning of May this year, that for public consultation, that says to extend the right to register vehicles without the European type approval, which European type approval is an alignment with the EU path, also for all categories of commercial vehicles and all categories of buses. So you can imagine that one set of vehicles with European type approval are designed to be aligned with the EU path. The other set of vehicles without the European type approval are not obliged to be aligned to this path, are not obliged to satisfy the requirements set out by the EU towards the goal. And that also will affect, I believe, this will affect the charging infrastructure, the need for the charging infrastructure, and for the scale that it would be deployed.
Okay, so you touched upon many points. I'm going to ask a bit of a provocative question, which was not on the list, since you mentioned it, about this cultural polarization. Do you really... Cyprus has a very, very strong car culture. Everybody knows that. It has to do with the infrastructure, but also the way that people are used to using their cars as part of the extension of their everyday lives. Somebody that actually drives an EV, do you think that they send a social message out to other drivers? If this is something which is desirable or not desirable for the culture of car ownership in Cyprus right now?
The culture of Cypriot motor is their favoritism for internal combustion engine. You can find it in many other countries in Europe. You can find it in Greece, you can find it in Germany, you can find it...
Not to the same extent, though.
In Germany, it's more, actually. Because they can also drive the vehicles at any speed on the non-restricted speed limits on the autobahns. The thing is that if they try to live with an electric vehicle, a battery electric vehicle, they will understand that you have to adapt to a minimal extent. But you have to start living with them and using them every day. For example, I'm in the category. I'm not living in the town. I'm in the category living outside Nicosia, and I cover 120 kilometers a day. I have an electric vehicle charged at 80%, not 100%, at 80%, which gives me a range of 300 kilometers. I don't mind. And I use it every day. My wife uses it every day, and we don't have a problem. So there is no actual reason for a good percentage of Cypriots not to buy a battery electric vehicle.
Okay. To that, I will definitely fully agree, because I also have an EV, and I live in Limassol and work in Nicosia, and I do this every day, and the range is not really an anxiety. It's not really an issue. Anyway, so thank you, Alexis. So, Yorgo, so given this strong car culture, the small distances of the hot climate that we have here, so how should an EV charger deployment strategy look like here in Cyprus?
Yeah, to what
Alexis said.
Alexis has said, recently we had to change my wife's car, and I suggested, why don't you go electric? And she said, no way. I'm going to be spending weekends at the holiday house. If I run out, what am I going to do? So I ended up buying hybrid instead of So unless we have a strategy where we widely spread charges so people can feel confident that I have no problem. Yes, I will spend 20 minutes, 15 minutes to a fast charge station. It would be much easier for them to switch over. And especially if we gradually manage to link the charges to renewables, and eventually it will happen, I think. And price will be even less for electricity. So we have to make certain moves. Highways, yes, they need to have charges. But as I said before, we need to encourage, and this is an argument that is going on between us, the oil industry and the government, to allow stations, gas stations, to have small facilities where somebody will stop for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, have a coffee, have a snack, charge and go. This is something we are fighting now for almost 2 years, and we have not succeeded. This is something that we will keep pressing, because perhaps it's the only way gas stations are spread all over the country. And in fact, some people say Cyprus has more stations than it needed, which is true. But it would be very easy for people to go and charge. And as rightly was put before, all these people living in apartments where there is no chance, they will think twice before going electric. It's two things we need to do: install public areas in towns where these are, and gas stations is the second, and highways, central points, people that, especially people that deliver goods all over Cyprus, they may run out for many reasons. And this is the only way we can solve it. And this is something we as well are encouraging, and it's part of our strategy.
Great, thanks. I had a discussion with a colleague this morning. He told me that he lives in a block of flats that now actually has EV chargers for every parking spot that belongs to that block. I don't know if this is how they build apartments now, but this would be a great development if they do. But you mentioned the coexistence, or not coexistence, but the prevalence of petrol stations in Cyprus. And I'd like to ask Dino next to you, what is these owners of these petrol stations, are they willing to go to that direction, to install EV chargers? And are they fearful of their business model? Maybe they won't have that many customers? Or what changes do they have to do to their petrol station in order to accommodate those people that will have to wait a little bit longer now?
Actually, we do have a model, and it looks very promising. As I said, we have at the moment in 5 petrol stations already installed chargers, almost in every town in Cyprus. One is on the motorway between Nicosia and Limassol, which is, or Larnaca to Limassol, which is in Chirokidea, which is a very key point. And that can be, if somebody is traveling, he can stop and charge over there. Something that George said earlier is that the petrol stations, they have the infrastructure that they can accommodate these people to stop. They have facilities that they can spend, say, 10 minutes or 15 minutes to recharge their vehicle. But something that we are fighting with the government since a long time, it's not 2 years, it's more than that. And we are fighting with the government to leave us have coffee shops or sell some snacks or something. So if somebody stops in a petrol station, to be able to maybe buy a chocolate or buy a sandwich or have a coffee. This, at the moment, by law is prohibited, and this is something that in all European countries and all over the world, you see that this facilities is there, and that will accommodate and maybe the reason why someone don't want to buy an electric car is this is one of the points, because where can I charge a car if I have to sit on the sun for about 15 minutes to recharge my vehicle? And this is something that, as I said, we are fighting to pass through the parliament.
This is true. It's a great point. I actually felt that myself when I had to publicly charge at that station, by the way, in Chirokidea. where
Chirogedia, you have actually.
you have the Sigma, which is you can actually
you
walk
have next
there.
to it, so you can go and have a coffee there.
But yeah, it's an issue for many months in this country. You cannot really stand outside for too long. There has to be facilities nearby. Marianna, next to you. So you introduced earlier on the activities of the European Investment Bank, but what specific investments has the EIB has done to support, well, in Greece and other countries, particularly for EV charging stations? Mm-hmm. Probably a better idea. Just don't open it. He's controlling.
Okay, so as I was mentioning, the European Investment Bank has invested more than 1 billion over the last 6 years. So this makes us a pioneer bank. As I said, it's a priority for us, the electrification of the road transport. So more than 2.7 gigawatts, more than 55,000 charging stations. So how did we start? We started many years ago investing in financing with venture capital at the time, because at the time we had startups promoting this kind of charging stations. So we started financing them. It was a big risk, but gradually we saw more mature companies getting into, and now we see that major companies, very big companies, are interested in getting into this market. So we started with venture capital, but we still with venture debt, but we continue with loans and framework loans, and we have many different examples in different countries. We have developed, and I can mention some of them. For example, we have done in Greece last year, we signed an agreement also for charging station, but also for hydrogen, which is a very pioneer, and we want to see how this is going to develop. In Belgium, we have financed the logistics. Also, logistics centers, they are creating some solar panels, and they want to propose to their tenants charging stations. In Italy, also this year, in Eastern European countries, so we have many different examples. In parallel, we have developed, from a technical assistance point of view, we have developed a guide, which is a consensus plan, which is addressed to local authorities. And this is very interesting because it allows the local authorities to plan how they are going to promote the development of this EV charging infrastructure. So I think that this is also something that would be... So we see that more investments will be needed. Most probably we will need 10 times what we have done so far. We see Draghi report also identifying what needs to be done and what needs to be corrected. And I see that as long as we have good players in the market, and also we have to make connection with renewable energy. It's a very good point, and we need to promote this direction, because we need not only electrification is, of course, the most credible way to decarbonize the transport. We need to use renewable resources, and I think that we need to work in this direction.
Yeah, that has to go hand in hand with the decarbonization of the grid. But I will come back to this a little bit. Christos, any examples or use cases? Because you mentioned earlier about the general direction for cities to reduce the number of cars in use, especially in city centres. and promote other means of transportation, including micromobility, but also public transportation measures. Do you have any recent or tangible, real case examples that use cases that can facilitate EV adoption, and most importantly, reduce the numbers of cars, as we said, and that can be tested and implemented fairly soon? I think you have something that you're working on.
Is this working? Okay, so I will continue the discussion on the point that, on what I raised in the previous answer, actually, that the ultimate goal is decarbonization.
Yes.
So electromobility should be accompanied with other initiatives such as share mobility services. But for sure, electromobility is a very statistical factor that can promote the decarbonization. So, and we are involved in one of the largest European research projects that is called MetaCase. And this project started in 2024. And Limassol is one of the 4 leader cities in this consortium, along with Munich, Tampere, and Amsterdam. And as Nestor has mentioned in the beginning, Limassol is one of the 100 cities that received the mission label, with the ultimate goal to achieve climate neutrality by 2030, an ambitious goal, but it's better to aim to shoot for the moon and land in the stars. So that's why those goals, even though we may laugh about them, they need to be there, and they have a purpose to play, a purpose on the decarbonization. So in that project, there is one on-demand minibus service that will begin operating in Limassol in September 2025. And that on-demand service, minibus service, will include a mix of electric minibuses, public transportation minibuses, and also private minibuses. And the target audience of this service in the beginning will be initially targeting students, and especially for their after-school activities. And remember, combining electricity with shared systems and shared services is the ultimate goal for decarbonization. So later on, this service will be targeting tourists and employees of certain companies in Limassol. Along with that on-demand service, there will be one on-demand platform that will be available where users can book their seats, and AI algorithms can match their requests with their potential drivers, and then the drivers can pick them up and optimize their travel and waiting times. So the city can aid in providing charging stations to charge those minibuses. At the same time, because there is not one solution that fits all, if it was like a mathematical equation, it would be solved by now and we would be achieving our goals. So there would be docking stations for electric shared bikes, and in the places where those docking stations will be available, should also be located charging stations to charge your private vehicles. And electromobility, shared transportation services are all a part of a system, because one person does not do one type of trip. We do different trip purposes. We may use our car for our commuting trips, but during for our leisure trips or recreational trips over the weekend, we may use alternative modes. So electromobility is not only applied to private vehicles, but also to buses and micromobility at the same time. So another effort through that project is the development of a mobility hub, which is a more modern, advanced term of the park and ride, and where different transportation modes will be available. And some of the key elements of this hub, the mobility hub, should have free parking for electric vehicles, and at the same time fast charging stations. Because in those mobility hubs, you may need to charge your vehicle in a very fast manner. So lastly, and most importantly, in the next 2 years, a new platform will be developed, and transport and energy platform that attempts to integrate the smart system through smart charging, and that can empower the electrification of public transportation system in Limassol. And as of now in Limassol, there are currently around 30 electric buses with the goal of increasing this number.
Okay. Thank you, Christos. Thanks very much for this very detailed overview of these activities. My concern, and I don't say that with a light heart because I'm also a researcher, is that these projects are fantastic in a small scale, but when you try to apply them to a larger scale and include all the private vehicle owners and normal people in everyday life, they usually run into issues that we, as researchers, really haven't thought of very well. And one of those, which I also have to mention that I am a victim of, is the payment schemes. Because right now, if you want to use your EV and charge at different locations, you have to have the right app on your phone, you have to have signed a contract with that specific company, and you have to go through a few hoops that not everybody is willing or able to do. And as far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, from 2025 onwards, the European Commission has mandated that all DC fast chargers on specific roads have to use a generic payment scheme without having to go through all this. So this is a question either for you, Yorgo, or for you, Dino, whoever wants to take that. What are your views on that? Because this is a real issue that I also face myself.
You cannot have people going around with a special app on their mobile, and tourists coming into Cyprus, and if you look at the number of tourists that we have here, and they have to be able to charge their vehicles. I don't know if rented cars, I still haven't seen many rented cars which are EV, but this is coming. So definitely,
there are a few.
Yes, not many. So yes, we must find a way that people will be able, like we do today. We have our, sure you're aware of, banknote acceptors, as we call them. Any time of the day or night, you can go, if you put your money, put your card. So it should be something similar that will help people and encourage people. Not having problem locating a charger, having problem in payment. This discourages people.
It does.
From going electric. So these are things that we should plan quickly, because if we don't succeed in the next couple of years, I'm afraid that people will be disappointed and continue. As Alexis said, 6% is EV now, which is nothing. And unless we do something drastic to encourage people to go for EV, it will be delayed.
Dino, would you like to add something to that?
Well, we actually resolved that. We have a platform. Anybody who can charge in our P chargers can pay with a credit card, he can pay with our app, he can pay with anything he likes. Even we have our own Petrolina card, which they have some benefits, they get some points, and then they get some benefits later on. So we have resolved that 99%. I can say, because always there is room for expansion. But whenever you see a P-charge, which is the brand name of Petrolina chargers, you can pay as you like. As I said, you can get a credit card, you can get an application, which we have a Petrolina app. So it's everything is resolved by us. And I'm sure that this will happen in all the charges all over Cyprus.
Well, let's hope so. It should be as painless as going to buy bread. Actually, you just beep, beep with your phone or with your credit card and be done with it.
Areas as well, you see, I mean, companies for sure, they will go and develop their own apps or their own ways. But this has to be applied in public places as well.
I think most of them at the moment, as far as I know, they can accept credit cards, so it's normal. But as I said, you need a platform to do that. We have a platform, our own platform, and they can follow up without any problem. And
Okay.
we have 100 points, as I said earlier, in supermarkets, in very key positions that these can, a public can charge there.
Okay. I'll come back now to Alexis to a point that he made earlier about the mandates that we have, specific climate targets and renewable penetration targets that they trickle down into basically a specific number of EV penetration per year in order to reach those targets. But what we have seen in the industry, and from about the middle of 2023 until now, is that the EV adoption is not as high as the projections would assume. They're actually quite a bit lower. It doesn't mean that EVs are not growing in sales. They do, but they don't grow as fast as we thought they would. How is this affecting your thinking about chargers and the infrastructure and the whole ecosystem about EVs, since you are in the car importer, let's say, side of the fence?
First of all, for the time being, all over Europe, also in Cyprus, we have choices. We have internal combustion engines satisfying the latest and very strict European specifications. We have the three forms of hybrid drive, mild hybrids, and plug-in hybrids, and battery electric vehicles. So people have a choice. So, of course, it fluctuates in the rest of Europe, and for many reasons, one of which is that some countries, large markets, have decided to stop subsidies, reduce them or stop them, which is very important factor. But for us in Cyprus, we started late. We are so much behind that we have a lot of ground to cover, and we have to focus on that and not on the fluctuations that we see in other European countries. But as years go, as things progress, it will be mandatory for manufacturers, in order to satisfy the requirements of set out by the EU. It will be mandatory to increase the electrification aspect of the vehicles that they produce. I'm talking about the vehicles that do this in combination with an internal combustion engine. So you'll see the necessity for the percentage of battery-driven vehicles to be increasing in combination with internal combustion engines towards the ultimate goal, which is zero emissions, which in this, what we have in front of us, the only mass-produced solution is battery electric vehicles.
Okay, there is, you all know that in 2035 there is a ban on new internal combustion engine vehicles in Europe, which is of course now not really total, because, yes, for production, for new ones, because mostly German manufacturers managed to crack a bit of the door open. But how do you view that? I mean, anyone can actually take this question. It doesn't have to be you, Alexis, because you are from that. How do you see that? Are you planning ahead? Are you ready for that? Is the public, the charging infrastructure ready? Is it just 11 years away?
Obviously, it is, we are not progressing towards 2035 in a fast enough manner. With the adoption of battery electric vehicles in Cyprus, with the infrastructure that is for the time being minimal, and also the choices that the consumers, the motorists have in Cyprus, compare also to the EU. I mentioned that we have a choice not to follow, not to buy vehicles that adhere to the European type approval requirements, which means that these vehicles are not aligned with this EU path that goes to 2035. So we see that many things are happening in Cyprus that do not encourage adoption of battery electric vehicles, and to reach that goal of 2035, which is in only 10, 11 years' time, I believe we'll be, again, far behind. And I don't know, of course, if 2035 will change, because there are a lot of voices, yes, everywhere that it's too optimistic.
Or maybe we're going to have synthetic fuels production everywhere. We'll have to pay 10 times more for, but...
We have synthetic, we have hydrogen.
If I remember correctly, it was 2030. And
Initially,
it went to 35.
Yes, it was
so
pushed to 35.
probably it will go to 40, and I don't know. I think we have a long period in front of us.
What you also see, I have to add, is from the side of the manufacturers, is that manufacturers that declared that we will stop producing internal combustion engines by, say, 2030 or whatever. Now they are backing up their, tracking up their claims and going towards 2035.
Yeah, because
So they're changing their plans.
Yeah, that's how it is. I mean, especially European manufacturers are frankly terrified of this change, especially what happens with Chinese battery electric vehicles, which are going to be coming on the shores cheaper. Actually, the legislation was, I think, voted yesterday about specific tariffs to put on Chinese EVs. Thank you all for that. Marianna, is there something else that you would like to mention? I have a note here about the EIB in Cyprus and the specific, specific events that have demonstrated measurable impact. I don't know if you covered that in your previous responses or you want to add something to that.
I think that it's important to highlight that how we work is that we usually implement the different financing tools that are provided by the European Union, by the European Commission. So we have many tools in our hands in order to promote renewable resources investments to allow better penetration of green production of energy. We have REPowerEU, we have InvestEU, we have many different tools available which allow us to do not only lending but also blending, which means to allow our borrowers to make use of grants that are available from the European Commission. Of course, we provide technical assistance with this in order to allow our counterparties to prepare viable investment plans. What we have done in Cyprus is that apart from the fact that we are financing the part of Cyprus for the structural funds, so we are financing so many of the things that are financed by structural funds in Cyprus have been supported also by the European Investment Bank. We have invested in the urban development of many different cities in Cyprus, and I see the Platia Eleftherias, the square in front of us, and it's a wonderful project that I believe that it was also supported by the EIB. Infrastructure and education, like the University of Cyprus, and we have a very good collaboration with the University of Cyprus. Now we have just signed investments for student accommodation in order to address housing. So many different, of course, high fiber, all these high tech, and we support innovation. I think that we're covering many different areas. We are opening an office in Cyprus in November. And this is supported, of course, by our Vice President, who comes from Cyprus, Mr. Kyriakos Kakouris.
Great. Thank you very much. I have exhausted the list of things that I wanted to ask the panel. We're actually running out of time a bit. But before we give the floor to the audience, is there something that any of you would like to add as a final note to what you have just said? Something that we may have missed?
What I have said, if I may.
Yes, of course. You want to use your microphone?
I'm used to having on the... I think people are confused. Many people are confused. You hear of hydrogen coming, and I know working for BP, we were trying that 35 years ago with BMW, and it never came through. But still, you can hear people talking of use of hydrogen. The other thing people are worried about is that if something goes wrong with the battery, and you have to replace a battery on an EV car, you need as much as the cost of the car to replace it, almost. The second thing is what do you do with these batteries once they are over? And recently I was in a meeting, and they were talking about the need of having on motorways special containers to accommodate an EV car on fire, because there is no way you can extinguish an EV car if it catches fire. So there are containers being developed. So all these things, you hear this going around, and people are asking questions, what is going to happen? And you hear of new cars, EV cars, expensive cars, that something went wrong with the battery. So all these, or some of these, are discouraging people plus the other difficulties we mentioned.
If I may add on this, is the issue of the battery is not the only thing. Also in Cyprus, technology is running very fast. All the mechanics in Cyprus, which they were fixing cars, they are still mechanics. And there are very few people that can go into the system of a car and fix it. Because now you just plug in and you just do a software or something, and most of the people here in the garages, they are not very aware or trained to follow up this technology upscale. This is something that can be, and I agree with George that the battery issue is very, I mean, if the battery goes wrong, then you need another car. The price of, I mean, if you compare both, it's better to buy a new car than buy a new battery.
Yeah, but the probability of that happening is probably very low. And that's why we have warranties from manufacturers to cover that.
Well, I mean, in 2024 today, I'm sure one day everything will be resolved. I mean, I remember about a few years back, we didn't have these things, and now we have it. And it's not only a phone, it's a computer which is in our hands. So I'm sure the human technology will start working on this.
Okay, thanks very much. I think that we should... Any questions that come from the audience, if there is anyone?
My name is Dimitris Vatis. Couple of months ago, I had to decide to go for EV or other kind of car. Finally, I went for plug-in hybrid to be on the safe side. Because all this situation. Secondly, after I got the car, I was trying to go to public charging points. Okay, I'm not the top IT, but I have the minimum requirements to do this. It was really not easy to make an account and all this. It's not user-friendly, the system.
Stations in use.
I've got the application. Anyway, it's okay. The other thing is about the cost for the consumer. Currently, from my awareness, is about 67%, 65% higher than the home charging. Do you expect that this will be changed in the future?
Good question.
Thank you very much.
One day, yes, but at the moment, the investment is very high. I mean, just to mention that one 150 kilowatt charger will cost about 180,000 euros. So you can imagine that to cover that investment, it's not easy. I said it before that at the moment, as a company and as a department, we are losing money, but we are using it as a marketing. I'm honest with you. This is the point at the moment. I'm sure one day it will be completely different. Yeah.
The authority had the plan we have for new charging stations is to work on renewables, because this is the only way we can do that. I mean, currently, electricity cost to us, and electricity authority doesn't make money. It's close to 30 cents per kilowatt hour. Production from a PV park is costing us about 6. So this is why I said it is important. Eventually, it will not happen straight away. It's eventually that these charges are supplied from renewables. If we can do that, it's the only way. There will be some margin for the investor as well, and some benefit will go to the consumer.
But if I may add to that point, because you say 6 cents for production, but what about at night? Don't you need infrastructure to store that excess energy in order to provide that renewables back to the car?
This is very true, and this is where EIP is coming in. We are applying for a loan to install our batteries, which this is the area where you can really finance.
Great. And yes, please. Take one.
Hello, thank you for the very insightful panel. My question is that by transitioning to electric vehicles or to the electrification of transport, what we are trying to achieve, we are trying to reduce the car emissions, I guess. So here in Cyprus, our power stations mainly rely on fossil fuels. How can we achieve meaningful results?
Fossil fuel, which is mazout.
Yeah, also, and I have another point. And other than giving billions of money to the infrastructure, what else are we doing, like educating people on the use of electric vehicles, about environmental or even economic, maybe environmental, some of the economic incentives that we can give? And also here in Cyprus, everyone has its own car. So how can we reduce our car usage and maybe promote electric public transport? And that's my question.
I don't want to disappoint our friend from Limassol, but I have a weekend house in Limassol. Whenever, all right, your buses are empty. Whenever I try, my wife insists because we live by the coast, and it's the easiest way to get to the marina is on a bus. And occasionally, when we decide to do that, the only people on the bus is foreign workers who just finished their work. People, we need to change the culture. If you can change that, it is not easy. You know, we have this now from Rasibi coming to Nicosia. My wife was telling me she traveled with my granddaughter. They were the only 2 people on the bus. So we need to change the culture, and that will take time. And the next step will go to electric.
Public transport is not for Cyprus. Honestly, the culture, the people, how they think. I come from Larnaca, okay? I came today. Sorry? Yeah. And if you, about 30 years ago, I remember we used to have transport. There were people coming in there working in Nicosia with a bus. Now, you see in every car, 1 person. So everybody is traveling by themselves. In the past, you could see, say, some people working in the government here, coming from Larnaca or from Limassol. There used to be three people in a car, 4 people in a car. They used to park their cars in the entrance of Limassol or Larnaca. They come to Nicosia. Now everybody comes with their own car. This is the culture, the inotropia, how you... That's it.
As well. So first, I live in Paralimni, but that project is in Limassol. So some statistics first. The public transportation ridership in Cyprus is around 2.5%. And okay, the goal is not to increase it like to 50%, but if we can get a little bit more people or double it, like 5%, 6%, then the benefits will be tremendous. And of course, public transportation in Cyprus is not for everyone.
Is that the lowest in Europe, by the way? Sorry to interrupt you, but I think this is the lowest in Europe. It's 2.5%.
Yeah, it's one of the lowest.
Yeah.
And sorry? Yeah.
You want to go from Marianna to the location, then what you do, you go to Google Maps and
Correct.
search for the address. Cyprus, there are no buses.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to comment is like, okay, maybe the goal is not to increase the uptake of public transportation from 2% to 50, but maybe to 5%. But at least make sure that the public transportation should be like electric buses that will be using energy from renewable energy sources. So at least the offset will be like clean energy. At the same time, as was pointed out, public transportation is not the best solution for Cyprus. It's like the US, for example, we are like in the suburbia. So people like their private vehicles. And actually in Cyprus, we are like have some opportunities because people used to live with their families. So households in Cyprus typically have more than one vehicles, like 3 to 4 vehicles. So if one of those vehicles should be electric, or in the beginning like plug-in hybrid, so instead of battery electric, so the electricity and electromobility can be introduced to families and they can start using those electric vehicles for specific trips. Slowly, then the culture may change. But yes, public transportation, like as we know it, the 50-seat buses is not the way to go in Cyprus. But it's the same, for example, in the US.
Thank you, Christos. We have run out of time. I think that we should close the panel here. I know there's another question, but I think that you can take it outside. We're going to be hanging around for a bit. Thanks again to the panel, and thank you for everyone for attending.